This was the first episode of our first season, introducing you to Vinton Harper, Mama's one and only son, who's been evicted from his home, and he's hoping that he and his 2 kids can stay with Mama until he gets back on his feet. Mama's sister is played by the fabulous Rue McClanahan. I remember when Rue came in to audition for the part of Fran, she was in a frilly little dress with a hat and a parasol, and there was never any question in anybody's mind that she would not be my sister Fran.
Good evening. I'm Alistair Quince, but I'm sure you're all aware of that. Aren't you? Tonight we will take a journey through that classic piece of Americana, Mama's Family. Those of you who faithfully followed the peregrinations, good word, of the Harper family, and no doubt already know that Mama now resides in cautious cohabitation with her unmarried sister Fran. For those of you who don't know this, I've just told you. By paying close attention and perhaps taking notes, you may find the answer to that tersely cogent question, will Mama ever get the tea stain out of her sink? Or perhaps you won't. In any event, Mama's Family. Good evening. I'm Alistair Quince, inviting you once again to glance into the fancies and foibles of Mama's Family, the show that proves once and for all that life is not a cabaret. Or perhaps life is not a bowl of cherries. Whichever. Tonight's story will feature most of our regular cast, Mama, Vint, Aunt Fran, Buzz, and Sonia, and Naomi. However, Myron, Mama's pet rooster, will not be with us tonight. It seems he flew the coop. Sorry. And now, to our story.
Vint and Naomi are tying the knot, and Eunice wants to sing at the wedding. Mama, Fran, and Ellen all agree that no one wants to hear that, but unfortunately, Eunice overhears them. She gets back at Ellen by blabbing a shocking secret that the whole town has been keeping from her, and the fur flies. We had a lot of fun with Carol Burnett and Betty White on this episode.
Good evening. For those of you who have difficulty remembering the names of world-famous celebrities, I am Alistair Quince. When we left Mama's Family last week, Mama, who had never been divorced, found out that her son Vint, who had been divorced once, was going to marry Naomi, who had been divorced twice. An ill-fated venture that could raise Vint to twice, and Naomi to thrice. So glue yourselves to your seats as we find out whether Vint is really going to marry Naomi or whether Vint is not going to marry Naomi. Or possibly both. Roll it.
Naomi agrees to let Eunice sing at the wedding, and Eunice is over the moon until, of course, she learns that Mama gave Vinton her father's precious sapphire ring. Eunice gets drunk, and there is a classic Eunice and Mama moment when she throws a tantrum, and then Vint and Naomi's big plans hit an unexpected snag. So much for the fairy tale wedding. It was the tackiest wedding dress ever sewn, and for those of you who are watching carefully, please notice Earl Bowen as the Reverend Meacham. He was a semi-regular on Mama's Family and went on to do Terminator 2.
Good evening. This is Alistair Quince. When we left Mama's Family last week, there were many curious questions left unanswered. Will Mama regret having Vint and Naomi's wedding at her house? Or will she be just as unhappy if it were held anywhere else? Will Sister Ellen divorce her husband Bruce after her discovery that he was making hanky-panky with his secretary? Sticky wicket, that one. Will Eunice get to sing at the wedding? And if so, will anybody listen? Those are the questions. And now, let us enjoy the answers.
For once, the family is not just feuding with each other, they are joining forces to try to win some big money on Family Feud. Richard Dawson charms Mama, and you will never guess which Harper really delivers under pressure. Richard Dawson was so fabulous, he just played it like he always was on the game show. And please put this dysfunctional family in real life, it is hysterical.
Good evening, this is Alistair Quince. We have a big show tonight, so good evening. This was Alistair Quince.
The gang throws Eunice a surprise party at the Bigger Jigger, but the big surprise is that she ends up spending her birthday in the local jail. Mama is there with her, too, alongside a happy hooker played by Yvonne Othon. For those of you with the great eyes, you will remember her as one of the Sharks' girlfriends in West Side Story, who went on to do Mama's Family.
Good evening, this is Alistair Quince. Raconteur, bon vivant, gourmet chef. You must taste my tea. Man about town, horse trainer, archaeologist, lover. I'm in the book. Beekeeper, philatelist, collector of matchbooks, and man voted most likely to succeed by his graduating class at Oxford. Modestly inviting you to watch Mama's Family. Good evening. This is Alistair Quince, saying to you tonight, as I used to say in my childhood days, ready or not, here I come. I was such a devil. I had quite a lonely childhood, actually. Most of my preteen years were spent quietly reading in my tiny room in our quaint little house in the English countryside. Because when I was 3, my parents moved to America. They could have mentioned it to me. But we're not here to discuss my childhood. We are here to introduce this week's episode of Mama's Family. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that now, so let's join them, shall we? I'm sorry I talked about myself so much.
Mama reunites with an old flame who whisks her away on a romantic trip out of town. Her family is scandalized, but they have nothing to fear. Mama won't surrender her virtue without a fight. She was a bit of a horn dog on the show. Lots of boyfriends. This one was played by William Wyndham. Great character actor.
Good evening, I'm Alistair Quince, welcoming you once again to the continuing confusing saga of Mama's Family. The show that uncovers the lies that have previously been hidden by truths, which in turn have previously been hidden by lies. The Harper house gets quarantined by the Board of Health, and Mama goes into a terrible snit because she has already paid her entrance fee for the rumba contest. I'm sure you'll be happy to know that Mama takes 3rd place in the rumba contest. Her partner comes in 2nd. I seem to have told you a lot more than I should have. Perhaps we should show you a different episode this evening. Should we? Good evening, I'm Alistair Quince. Tonight we're going to take a backward glance at Mama's Family. Of course, we always take a backward glance at Mama's Family, but this time we really are going to quite literally glance into the past, many moons ago. That's right, Mama's Family, many moons ago. This was when her son, Vint, was between marriages. At that time, Vint, a little wilder, a little more adventurous, but no smarter. Let us just say, it was not a time of rhapsody. Don't you love the way I talk? In those days, Vint was under the influence of his ne'er-do-well comrade, Claude Canemaker, and a lot of 3.2 beer. Mama, of course, tended to be beside herself. Her favorite position. Now, why don't we get into our favorite positions and see what tonight has in store for us?
Eunice goes on a self-improvement kick and gets a new attitude. It works like a charm, and she's finally cast in a juicy role at the local playhouse. But Eunice is up against the beautiful Gloria DeHaven in this episode. This was also Harvey's last episode with us. Miss you, Harv.
Good evening. This is Alistair Quince, about to take you on another cruise down the muddy river known as Mama's Family. Tonight we're going to break with tradition, and instead of not telling you what the story is about, we're going to tell you what the story isn't about. In Hamlet, William Shakespeare once said, "The play's the thing." And subsequently it was said by Tony Randall in Love, Sidney. Or was it Gary Coleman? I always get them mixed up. In any event, the play is the thing, at least for the next 30 minutes. Here's Mama's Family. Good evening, this is Alistair Quince. This is also Alistair Quince. Notice the resemblance? Tonight, Mama's Family takes a detour from the normal progression of events and brings you back in time to a story that has hitherto been buried in the archives. Not far enough back to show Mama as a young girl. She was young once, you know. But back to a period when the tangled relationships we now know had yet come to fruition. To make a long story short, something I find very difficult. Here is Mama's Family. I do hope you're enjoying me as much as I am. Good evening, this is Alistair Quince. Tonight, you may watch the story of a tall, handsome private detective who lives in Hawaii with his cute mustache. After a number of fights, car chases, and a soupçon of killings, our hero finally brings the villain to justice. Stout fellow. However, if that kind of mayhem is not to your taste, sit back and enjoy the mayhem of Mama's Family. Good evening. This is Alistair Quince. Tonight, instead of presenting Mama's Family, I'm going to tell you some rather amusing anecdotes about me and... Ladies and gentlemen, Mama's Family.
It's a big day for Ellen. She is Raytown's Woman of the Year, and the country club is honoring her with a very fancy party. But Mayor Tutwiler has a surprise for Ellen. Mama, Vinton, and Naomi are invited, and they didn't bring their country club manners. What you won't see on this episode is that when we were taping, Betty accidentally called the mayor Mayor Tutwiler, and it took us forever to get the scene filmed.
Good evening. This is Alistair Quince, who introduces you to Mama's Family each week and then disappears into oblivion. So if you're ever in oblivion, drop by. Perhaps we could have a little chat. In the meantime, Mama's Family. Good evening. This is Alistair Quince. Actually, I'm really Alistair Quince Jr., as I was named after my father. Or was it my mother? They never did tell me. In any event, let's see what names the members of Mama's Family call each other tonight.
Mama gets hit in the head with a stew pot and lands herself in the hospital. Vinton wants to know how it happened, but Naomi, Ellen, and Eunice all have their own version of the story.
Good evening. This is Alistair Quince, your old friend, bringing you good news and bad news. Uh-oh. The good news is that we are about to present the latest episode of Mama's Family. The bad news is that I shan't be in it. Pity. This is Alistair Quince, and this is Mama's Family. Guess which is which? Good evening. For those of you who've been neglecting the networks for cable TV, this is Alistair Quince about to bring you another adventure of that merry little group of madcaps, Mama's Family. I shan't tell you anything about tonight's story except that Mama is upset. So what else is new? Let us sit back and find out exactly what's bugging her tonight.
Mama's cousin Gert used to be a barrel of laughs, but now she's wasting away in a nursing home. Mama goes to visit and tries to bring a little spring back into the old gal's step. I have often said that I got to touch the golden age of television, and here is a little piece of it, Mama dancing with Imogene Coca.
Good evening, this is Alistair Quince, with the thrilling announcement that I have just been nominated for an Emmy as the best introducer of Mama's Family. The competition was awesome. Now, for all my fans out there, here's Mama's Family. Good evening. This is Alistair Quince. Tonight, Mama's Family is about... What is it about? Ah, yes, I remember. It's about a half hour. Enjoy. Good evening. In the event that you are interested, this is Alistair Quince. And if you are not interested, boo on you. Tonight, my assignment, if I choose to accept it, is to introduce Mama's family. And as I do choose to accept it, in fact, embrace it, this is Alistair Quince introducing Mama's family.
Hold on to your hats. Mama's at the wheel. The family has a devil of a time trying to get her safely on the road, but when there's a blue organza hat to be shopped for, Mama changes her tune. You know, many people stop me and tell me they are just sure they know where Mama's neighborhood was. I'm just saying this is Pasadena, y'all. Mama's ready for wheels of her own, and the deal she gets from Vinton's friend Willie Potts just might be too good to be true. This is early Fred Willard, kids. He gave Mama a lemon, and we made lemonade.
Good evening. As I have said before and will indubitably say again, this is Alistair Quince. Tonight, in between the commercials, they do pay the rent, you know. We are proud to present the latest adventures of that group of strolling players known as Mama's Family.
Fran gets a job as an advice columnist, but there's one problem. She gives terrible advice. She's in over her head until Mama bails her out with her infinite wisdom. Rue McClanahan, the consummate perfectionist. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse until she just drives everyone nuts.
Good evening. This is Alistair Quince, about to reveal still another of his multifaceted talents, the art of mimicry. Ready? Humphrey Bogart. He ain't looking at you, kid. Gary Cooper. Yup. How do you like me so far? And to finish with the real biggie, Ed McMahon. Here's Mama. Eat your heart out, rich little. Ronald Coleman, do we have time for it? Probably. Good evening, this is Alistair Quince. And for your information and edification, I do use such good words. Quince is not only just a name, it is also a fruit of a Central Asiatic tree of the rose family that resembles a hard-fleshed yellow apple and is used for marmalade, jelly, and preserves. Just a little something to dwell upon after you watch Mama's Family.